You're listening to the Business and Life Podcast, where 7 days a week, proven entrepreneurs share their success stories, failures, and give you true value on how you can build a great business and an awesome life. With your host, Mike Olivas.
All right, Josh, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike, for having me on.
Absolutely. So tell our listeners where you're from and maybe a little something interesting about yourself.
Well, I grew up in Los Angeles, California, and today I'm living in Boston. I'm 44. I'm married. I've got 2 businesses, and along the way, I spent some time in Hong Kong, China, started a marketing agency, got to write for about 24 different business publications, generated about $10 million for my agency with that writing.
Wow.
I've done some books, TEDx talks, speaking, stuff like that, and now I enjoy researching influence and leadership.
Awesome. What made you interested in influence and leadership?
It was really that experience with writing for all these publications. The opportunity to write for Forbes dropped in my lap in 2013. And at that point, my business was on the verge of bankruptcy. And I started writing for Forbes. And a few years later, we were generating millions. We had expanded globally. And I was just so stunned by the turnaround. I thought, this is really interesting. It happened on accident the first time. I want to research this and figure out how this works, how somebody builds influence like this. And so I started studying it, and I came up with a framework called the 7 Systems of Influence, which is all about how to build influence, not necessarily writing for publications or speaking, but also just as a parent, as an academic, a teacher, as a friend. Just how do you influence people? What are the systems that make that work?
That's awesome. So you built a model or kind of a framework around those 7 steps to build influence within a specific, your own specific niche demographic-ish.
Exactly. And I went back and I looked at figures from history. So I looked all the way back to the Greek philosophers and the Roman emperors, and I thought, okay, let's see if this framework works for these people. And no matter who I analyze, I'm able to go back and see how they use these systems, knowingly or unconsciously, but they used these systems to develop the influence that they had.
So you're saying there's a system when no matter the demographic, whether you're talking to Gen Zs, millennials, or a specific type of group, that these 7 systems stick.
Right. For example, right now, you're influencing people with your podcast, and part of the way that you did that is you had a vision of what you wanted to create, you figured out what you're good at, and you created a podcast centered on your expertise with entrepreneurship. You know who your audience is, who you're going after. These are the first 3 systems: vision, genius zone, and audience. And then there are the 4 other systems. But you're using these systems as well to build your audience, your tribe, your following. And so is everybody else out there who's influencing other people. And this is critical because we talk about how knowledge is power, but knowledge really isn't power. You can know everything and not be able to do anything until you can influence other people to act.
That's right. Action is power. I absolutely agree with that. And I want to say it again. Knowledge is not power. Action is, right? How do you actually implementing that knowledge?
Right. Knowledge is great. I mean, I love reading books as much as the next guy. I read 100 books every year. I read tons of business books, but you can read a bunch of books and then sit there and not do anything and nothing happens.
That's right. No, 100%. So tell us a little bit about InfluencerInc.co. What does your company do? What kind of value does it bring to the marketplace?
So Influencer Inc. is a business I started to help people to become thought leaders. My philosophy is most people in the world are good, and if I can help people to become more influential, grow their influence, then they'll use that influence to make the world a better place. So Influencer Inc. offers services around LinkedIn and around helping people get speaking gigs. We do masterminds to help people learn these 7 systems of influence, but it's all centered around helping people become thought leaders, get their message out there in the marketplace.
Very cool. So how long has that been in business?
So Influencer Inc. started about 2.5 years ago. Before that, for the previous 20 years, I was running my marketing agency, MWI, which is your standard digital marketing agency. That's where I got my experience as an entrepreneur.
So is there, when you mention the word influencer, that's kind of obviously a big just sound bite these days, right? Are you really focused more on influencing, like having leaders be influential, converting from like let's say a business or industry leader and in their specific, let's say expertise, and then moving into an influencer model to become either a speaker, a podcaster, somehow to get their message across?
Exactly. You look at somebody like Richard Branson and you think, here's Richard Branson, he's a successful entrepreneur, he's got this airline, and if you asked anybody off the street, which airline would you rather fly, Delta or Virgin Airlines, all other things being equal, Most people will say Virgin. Well, why? Well, it just seems like a more fun company. And there's this smiling, happy CEO who's out there doing great things, writing cool books and stuff. And we do business with people that we know, like, and trust. And we don't like to do business with faceless corporations. And so part of the market that I go after, the people that I work with, are entrepreneurs or they're business leaders who are saying, I need to get out and be the face of my company, but I don't know how to do this. How do I get out there? How do I write the book? How do I manage my social media? How do I speak? And how do I do all this when I'm super busy running my business? That's the target market that we're going after with Influencer Inc. With 7 Systems, it's more broad. We're going after everybody and anybody and trying to help everybody become more influential.
That's awesome. Is social media a big part of that?
Yeah, LinkedIn is a big part of it because we've chosen to go after a business and executive audience first. I'm not out there to help the 25-year-old guy who's trying to become a YouTube influencer or sell stuff on Instagram. That's not my market. My market is more the mature entrepreneur executive who has a message, has great experience, has all this valuable knowledge in his or her head, but just doesn't know how to get it out there.
You mentioned something earlier, and I kind of is a good caveat to my next question, which was, give me a time where you hit rock bottom. You mentioned you were on the verge of bankruptcy before, right? You could use that or another example. But I always like to ask that question because there's a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs, and not just those that are entrepreneurs now that have, veteran businesses that have been around for a long time that have gone through this or possibly might be coming up to this. But is there a time that you were able to overcome just disaster, a very big objection?
Yeah, I've been rock bottom so many times, and I might be rock bottom again in the future, but probably the biggest rock bottom experience was 2007. That's when I almost went out of business. My business was doing poorly at that point. I hadn't paid myself in 4 years. That's how bad the business was doing. And then we hired a new account manager, and he lost all of our clients. We had 3 clients left. We were 1 month away from going under. And I didn't know what to do. And that's when I started talking to anybody and everybody trying to get help. And that's when I reached out to a friend who was in the PR industry and said, what can I do here? And she introduced me to a Forbes editor. And then the rest is history. After that, I started writing for Forbes, and that started bringing attention to my agency. And that saved us. We wouldn't be around today. So she's my best friend.
Yeah, I bet. If she wasn't, she should be now.
Yep.
That's right. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I think there's a lot of reasons why sometimes people don't jump in. And I think it's just the transparency around that there's going to be those times, and, understanding that there's just a lot of speed bumps, if you will, and there's a lot of big mountains to climb. Why do you think that there are entrepreneurs out there, or those that try to start a business? Why do you think there's some that just end up giving up? Life Nation, we're all striving towards different goals. Maybe your goal is to finally quit the 8 to 5 grind, quit your job, or take the next step with your existing business. Whatever the goal may be, regardless of your reasons, if you are serious about taking the next step and finally trying to build the life that you deserve, the life that you want to live, take the leap of faith. Go to michaelolivas.com and let's discuss your goals and life. It's 100% free. There's no obligation. It's michaelolivas.com. Schedule a quick call. I'd love to help.
Because it's hard. I mean, entrepreneurship is hard, and you don't get this from the business magazines, because the only people who show up on the covers of magazines are the guys who skyrocketed to this amazing success. And it looks like it happened overnight. And a lot of those people, I don't want to not give them their due. A lot of these people worked hard for a lot of years, and it's just, the magazines make it look like it was an overnight success. But I struggled for 13 years. I didn't pay myself for 4 years. I never made a 6-figure salary for those 13 years. I mean, I was paying my employees 6-figure salaries, and I wasn't making one myself. And it was just terrible. I was living in a studio apartment. I drove a car with my wife that we shared that had no air conditioning. I mean, these are first world problems, but it was not the image of success that you would see on the cover of a magazine. But that was my reality. And now here I am 20 years into my entrepreneurial adventure, and I'm starting to experience some success here. And people are saying, oh, look at what you did. And I've had people on Twitter who call me out and they're like, oh, you've got it so easy. And I'm like, dude, you should see what I went through for the last 20 years. Like, this was not easy. And a lot of entrepreneurs, though, they read the magazines and then they get into this grind and they're like, wait, this is supposed to be easy. I mean, I've been doing this for 6 months and I'm not a millionaire yet.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, Yeah, like try it for 20 years and let's
Yeah.
see where you're at. Like the magazines are not reality. That's the entertainment show for entrepreneurs.
I think that's great advice. I think that to get what we can pull out of that, that's a great point. So thank you. It's sacrifice is going to be huge. Patience is going to be huge. And that's why some people might give up. Are you willing to sacrifice? I mean, like at the age of 30, I moved home with mom and dad. Like that wasn't really good for the ladies, right? But I moved home. I moved home with mom and dad. It was what it just, that was necessary for me to get out of the mindset of having fun in Newport Beach and living it up, which I did. And I ended up going back in 14 months. But in 14 months, I just had to grind and sit inside of my parents' extra bedroom, which I turned into an office, and my P90X studio on top of that, because I didn't want to. I didn't really pay a subscription to the gym at the time. I just was grinding, right? And that's what it takes. So sacrifices doesn't mean you got to pack everything up, but those kind of things are necessary. Like you mentioned, you're going to be giving. It's okay to pay your employees more than you're paying yourself at some point. If you're at that position where they're still keeping the cash flow going for the business and you're just trying to grind it, that's okay, because the end game, business and life listeners, is if you're building a company, hopefully you're building it for an exit strategy, or you have a valuation aspect to it, because that's where your end game is. And really, like, you're not looking as much as at 401ks and Roth IRAs anymore either. Like, you're hoping to build a valuation of a business, and that takes time. And there's no such thing as an overnight success. I mean, it takes 10 years to be an overnight success at minimum, I think. And people sometimes think that Amazon just popped out of a book, right? Like that didn't happen either. Like, it just took many, many years to create those understandings of processes and procedures. What kind of things are you currently excited about your business right now?
For me, it's the impact on people. I'm working directly with people as an executive coach now and doing these masterminds, which puts me right in touch with people. I'm not building a scalable business right now. I'm building a business that is very one-on-one. It's very personal. And I'm doing this on purpose because I'm trying to write a book and build scale later, but I'm doing non-scalable things right now so that I'm really in touch with my audience. And I love working with people directly. I love getting in the weeds with people and digging through the problems that they have and sitting down with them, and then seeing the lights go on and see the breakthroughs happen. This is one of the funnest things out there. And there are a lot of entrepreneurs out there who are trying to build these scalable businesses, but they lose touch with the consumer, with the marketplace. And then you end up with debacles like maybe the WeWork example is one of those. But there are a lot of businesses that have lost touch with their audience because the people at the top are not meeting with the people who are actually giving them money. And that can only last so long before people stop giving you money. So I love being in touch with people directly.
I think you mentioned something that I really like, because I resonate with it personally. I'm doing the same thing on some coaching and advising and helping businesses grow, because I really enjoy to do it. But it's scalable? No, it's not. Like you're trading time for money still, and that's okay from a model's perspective. But I like what you mentioned, because I'm on the same page with you, Josh, is in terms of I'm getting to know my clientele. I'm getting to know what is the best clientele, so you can I'm going to carve out my specific niche like you're doing. So then, some of those masterminds, et cetera, come with, like, you're a marketing guy. I love the marketing space as well. Then you know who you're talking to, right? You know who your niche demo is, right?
Yeah. A couple of years ago, I wrote a book called Chief Marketing Officers at Work, and I got to interview CMOs from Target and PayPal and Spotify and GE, a bunch of these huge companies. And it was really interesting to see the similarities and differences. One difference between all these CMOs was none of them took the same path to become the top marketer at their organization. They had all sorts of crazy backstories. But one thing they all had in common was they had empathy for their audience. They knew their customer, and they could make marketing decisions without doing focus groups, without going out and doing surveys, because they were living the lives of their customers and they were always with their customers. And so they could just make snap decisions really quickly because they had that empathy. They could stand in their customers' shoes.
Yeah, no, that's huge. I think that's a great, so that book, again, Chief Marketing Officers at Work.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, so we're talking a little bit about, business. We're talking a little bit about, we jumped into a little bit of life initially with the hitting rock bottom part. How have you currently built, or have you built the life that you want to live out of your businesses, Josh?
Boundaries. That's the key word for me, is that I made decisions to establish boundaries first before I knew that they would work. But I used to work 100-hour weeks. I did that for years. I did that when I wasn't getting paid. And that's part of why I hit rock bottom. I was fat. I was out of shape. I was miserable. I wasn't getting any sleep. My wife never saw me. And finally, I just came to a point where I said, if I keep doing this, I'm going to die. I'm already broke. I've got nothing to lose, but I'm also going to die here if I keep working this way. And so I established boundaries and I said, I'm not going to work more than 40 hours a week. I'm going to cut 60 hours a week from my work schedule. And guess what happened? 2 months later, after 4 years of not getting paid, 2 months later, I was getting paid. I was paying 10 or 20 grand a month off of debt. And setting that boundary of saying I'm only going to work 40 hours a week meant I had to make good decisions with those 40 hours. I didn't have unlimited time anymore, so I had to really manage my time wisely. And so since then, I've set more and more boundaries for myself, rules to make sure that my time is constricted, to make sure that my activity is constricted. And we don't like that, right? As entrepreneurs, we want freedom. We want boundless activity to do whatever we want. And I found that actually it's setting those boundaries that gives you the freedom to do bigger and better things.
100%. I think that, I think Tony Robbins says it best about life's about what you tolerate, your boundaries, your morals, where you set those. And, you create better and better habits. You start creating more and more success, however you measure success. But will guarantee you bad habits will continuously hold you back or be some of your biggest speed bumps. And that's true. Being unhealthy, that's just number one is so big. If you're like, if you're waking up at 10 a.m., every morning, it doesn't mean you got to wake up and only have 4 or 5 hours of sleep. But if you're just not getting the amount of sleep that you need, you're not fresh. If you're not getting the workouts you need, you're not going to get there. And I have something on my refrigerator with my spin class schedule, and it says, great success equals great fitness, right? And I think it really does coincide on how I'm able to have the energy. Because if you don't have the energy, good luck working 100-hour weeks, right? And if you have to, of course, at that point, but eventually that gets easier and easier as your business grows. Out of all your successes, Josh, and failures, of course, what in your business, is there one piece of parting advice that you would give to the business and life listeners today?
That the most important thing in all of this is love. It's if you're coming from a place of, hey, I'm just trying to make money, it's all transactional. And your customers are going to see that, your audience is going to see that, and it's going to suck the life out of you, and it's going to make you miserable. But if you're coming from a place where you have passion for what you're doing, you really love the work you're doing, and I'm not saying you have to follow your passions, but be passionate about what you do, perhaps. If you have empathy for the people that you're working with, your customers, your partners, your coworkers, your employer, your employees, and then finally, if you have goodwill towards people, you really want to help people and really want to serve people, that's where things get exciting with entrepreneurship, because then you can help people and you see a change in their life where they get better. And there's no bigger payoff than that. You could make millions of dollars, but you're going to be left empty inside if you don't have that love element. That's right.
Do your work with love, listeners, and you will have that fulfillment angle for sure. Thanks so much, Josh. Where can we have our listeners find you?
My website, joshsteimle.com, the best place to connect with me.
joshsteimle.com. Take a look at the show notes. You'll see some of the sound bombs that we just kind of dropped here today. Josh, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Mike, for having me on.
You got it. Life Nation, you got to remember that in order for things to change, you must change. And in order for things to get better, you must get better. You just got better by hanging out with me, Michael Libas, and the Business and Life Nation. So come back tomorrow because I'm here dropping sound bombs 7 days a week, baby. If you'd like to subscribe, please do, so you can take action and execute. See you tomorrow.